Okay, deep breaths, Leo. It's just a little test. A calibration, really. My thumb hovered over the button on the ridiculously complex remote control, the one labeled with a tiny icon that looked vaguely like a cloud getting poked by a stick. This was it. Phase 1 of Operation Olfactory Serenity. Or maybe Operation Passive-Aggressive Precipitation. I hadn't decided on the final codename yet. The contraption itself sat nestled amongst my slightly overgrown azaleas near the fence line I shared with Carol. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a particularly ambitious DIY sprinkler project gone wrong. A network of PVC pipes painted a hopeful shade of forest green, culminating in a series of small, brass nozzles aimed vaguely upwards and slightly sideways, connected via a discreet black hose to the main water line and wired to a small, weatherproofed box containing a pump and what the online technician called the scent matrix injector. It was my answer to a problem I never thought I'd have. My finger twitched. I pressed the button. Piff! Sht! A surprisingly fine mist shot out from the nozzles, catching the fading dusk light like a cloud of tiny diamonds. It drifted gently on the almost non-existent breeze, carrying the distinct, calming aroma of lavender and chamomile. Success. It worked. The range seemed maybe a tad more enthusiastic than anticipated, extending a good 10 feet before dissipating, but the mist itself was delicate, subtle even. My self-congratulation lasted approximately 4.7 seconds. Slam! Carol's back patio door flew open with enough force to rattle her wind chimes, the ones she complained I could hear, despite being 50 feet away. She emerged onto her patio like a bloodhound catching a scent, nostrils flared, head whipping back and forth dramatically. Her eyes, already narrowed in perpetual suspicion, scanned the air. Then, they locked onto the source. The nozzles, the pipes, my creation. Leo! Leo Miller! What is that infernal smell? She shrieked, her voice cracking with indignation. Before I could formulate a suitably nonchalant reply involving experimental fern hydration, another, more ominous set of lights appeared, flashing red and blue, painting stripes across my house and Carol's perfectly manicured lawn. Great. Officers Henderson and Chen were walking up my driveway, their expressions radiating a familiar blend of weariness and, what fresh suburban hell is this? Okay, I muttered under my breath, shoving the remote control into my pocket. Subtle mist setting might need recalibration down from minor squall. And maybe lavender wasn't the best choice for a stealth test. It's practically Carol's bat signal for perceived olfactory offenses. Cops already? Does she have 911 programmed for unidentified pleasant aromas? Carol, spotting the officers, abandoned her interrogation of me and turned her full attention and a trembling, accusatory finger towards them. "Assault!" she wailed, clutching her throat as if the chamomile were choking her. "He's assaulting me with weaponized potpourri. Officer, arrest this man. He's spraying chemicals." Officer Henderson, a man whose patience I suspected had been eroded molecule by molecule through years of dealing with neighborhood disputes over recycling bins and rogue squirrels, stopped at the edge of my lawn. He surveyed the scene. Me trying to look innocent near my azaleas. Carol performing her best impression of a damsel distressed by air freshener. And the strange PVC contraption quietly dripping near the fence. He sighed. It was a sigh that contained multitudes. "Leo," he said, his voice flat. "Evening. What in the name of Glade plugins is that thing?" That thing? That thing was justice. That thing was ingenuity. That thing was the culmination of 2 weeks of escalating absurdity that all started, believe it or not, with a single pleasant-smelling candle. 2 weeks earlier. Picture this: a perfect early summer evening, temperature hovering around a blissful 70 degrees, crickets chirping their little hearts out. Me, Leo Miller, mild-mannered technical writer by day, aspiring connoisseur of pleasant evenings by night, sitting on my back porch swing, reading a book. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. And providing the olfactory soundtrack? A single, elegant jar candle, purchased from that store in the mall with the vaguely French name. The scent? Ocean breeze. Evocative, calming, and decidedly unaggressive. Or so I thought. The sound of hurried footsteps on the gravel path connecting our yards announced her arrival before I even saw her. Carol appeared around the side of her house, marching with the determination of a drill sergeant, one hand fluttering near her nose like she was warding off invisible gnats. "Leo! Leo!" she called out, her voice tight. "Do you smell that?" I looked up from my book, genuinely confused. "Smell what, Carol?" I took a deliberate sniff. Faint scent of cut grass from earlier, maybe a hint of my neighbor Dave's barbecue 3 doors down, and... "Oh, you mean my candle? It's Ocean Breeze. Nice, isn't it?" Her face contorted, as if I'd just confessed to brewing toxic waste. "Nice? Nice? Leo, it's overpowering. It's noxious. It's wafting directly into my sunroom. I was trying to enjoy my chamomile tea, and all I can smell is your artificial sea air." I frowned, glancing at the candle. It was maybe 3 inches tall, sitting on a small table at least 15 feet from her property line. The flame flickered gently. The breeze was negligible. "Overpowering? Carol, it's just one candle. I can barely smell it from here." "Don't you dare minimize my sensitivities," she snapped, taking a step closer, her hand now pressed dramatically to her temple. "I have delicate sinuses. They are inflamed. This chemical concoction you're burning is giving me a pounding migraine just standing here. It's aromatic aggression." Aromatic aggression? Was that even a thing? "Look, Carol, I'm sorry it's bothering you, but it's just a candle." "It is not just a candle," she interrupted, her voice rising. "It is an invasion, an olfactory assault. This neighborhood is supposed to be a peaceful sanctuary, not a Yankee candle testing facility. You need to extinguish that offensive object immediately. This is a scent-free zone." She gestured vaguely around the entire subdivision, as if she had the authority to declare olfactory martial law. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. A scent-free zone? Since when? Was she going to ban flowers next? Barbecues? Freshly cut grass? "Carol," I said slowly, trying reason one last time. "It's my porch. It's one small candle. Maybe close your sunroom window if it's drifting." "How dare you suggest I inconvenience myself because of your inconsiderate fumigation?" she sputtered. "Extinguish it now, Leo, or I will be lodging a formal complaint." And with that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her house, leaving me sitting there in the supposedly offensive ocean breeze, bewildered and slightly annoyed. A formal complaint? About a candle? Surely she wouldn't. Oh, how naive I was. The next few days were an exercise in escalating olfactory appeasement and utter failure. The formal complaint apparently involved Carol calling the non-emergency police line to report suspicious fumes emanating from my property. Officer Chen actually showed up, looking deeply apologetic, sniffed the air, confirmed it was indeed a candle, and left, advising Carol that candle burning was not, in fact, illegal. This only seemed to embolden her. Fine, I thought. Compromise. I bought unscented paraffin candles. The classic white emergency kind. No ocean breeze, no sandalwood vanilla, nothing. Just wax and wick. Carol's response: "Leo, that flickering! It's right in my line of sight when I'm trying to watch my programs. It's visual pollution. It's distracting. It's giving me eye strain." Okay, deep breaths. I moved the unscented candle to the other side of my porch, behind a large potted plant, out of her direct line of sight. Her verdict? I can still sense it, Leo. The heat waves, they shimmer, and the potential for smoke, it makes me anxious. What if it sets your plant on fire? Right. New strategy. I stopped burning candles outside altogether. I bought a small, tasteful diffuser from my home office, using only the faintest hint of lavender essential oil, keeping the windows firmly shut. Peace at last? Nope. The next afternoon, Carol was at my door. Leo, she said, her voice hushed conspiratorially. I don't want to alarm you, but I think there might be something wrong with your insulation. I keep getting whiffs of something floral, seeping through the walls into my living room. You should really get that checked out. It could be mold. Mold. She thought my diffuser was mold. That night, recounting the saga to my friend Dave over beers, I reached my breaking point. I even bought her a fancy HEPA air purifier as a peace offering, I lamented, slamming my bottle down slightly too hard. You know what she said? She said the faint ozone smell from the purifier motor was worse than the candle and triggered her electrical sensitivities. There's no winning, Dave. She's pathologically offended by pleasantness. Dave chuckled. Dude, you need to fight fire with fire. Or, scent with scent. What am I supposed to do? I sighed. Install industrial-grade air fresheners aimed at her house? And then Dave said the magic words, probably jokingly. Or like one of those misting fan things they have at outdoor restaurants, just loaded up with Glade. A misting fan, loaded with scent, aimed. The gears started turning. Slowly at first, then picking up speed, not a fan, something more precise, more controllable. Something that could create a gentle, pleasant atmospheric zone on my side of the property line. A buffer. An olfactory defense shield. I went home, fired up my laptop, and started researching. Irrigation systems, patio misters, greenhouse humidifiers, theme park fog machines, special effects equipment, nozzles, pumps, timers, remote controls. She complains about my scent? Fine. What if I could create my own scent barrier? A pleasant little mist zone. Something calming, like lavender or chamomile. Something targeted. My frustration morphed into a strange, giddy sense of purpose. I started sketching on a notepad. PVC pipes, a connection to the water line, a small pump for pressure, an injector port for essential oils, nozzles angled just so, a remote control. It was ridiculous, it was disproportionate, it was probably going to be expensive, and it was perfect. Operation? Misty Spritz cannon was officially a go. My first call was to reliable Ralph's Plumbing, we get the water flowing. Ralph himself answered, his voice sounding like he gargled gravel and hadn't been surprised by anything since the invention of the flush toilet. Yeah, Ralph speaking. Hi, Ralph, I said, trying to sound like a normal homeowner with a normal plumbing request. Leo Miller here. I'm looking to get some work done on my sprinkler system. Need to add a new zone. All right, Ralph grunted. Whereabouts? Along the back fence line, I said. Need to tap into the main line near the hose bib, run some PVC pipe, maybe 3/4 inch. Along the fence, probably about 20 feet. Okay, standard sprinkler heads? Here came the tricky part. Actually, I said, aiming for casual, I was thinking something different, more specialized. I need really targeted hydration for some, very delicate, prize-winning ferns I have back there. They require a fine mist, you see. So I was thinking of installing these. I read from the website I had open. Precision misting nozzles. Maybe 4 or 5 of them. A pause. I could almost hear Ralph mentally picturing my backyard, which contained exactly 0 prize-winning ferns. Misting nozzles, he repeated slowly. For ferns, along the fence. That's right, I said brightly. Gotta keep that humidity just right. Huh. Most folks put misting nozzles over the plants, kid, pointing down, not sideways. Along a fence? Think fast, Leo. Ah, well, these are horizontal ferns, I improvised lamely. They grow outwards, need side misting. It's a rare varietal. Ralph sighed, a sound heavy with the accumulated weirdness of decades in the plumbing trade. Horizontal ferns, right. And this valve setup you got sketched here? I had emailed him my crude drawing. You want this solenoid valve wired for remote control access? Exactly, I said. For, variable moisture delivery, based on atmospheric conditions, and fern mood. It's very scientific. Another sigh. Look, kid, it's your money. You want sideways misting nozzles for your horizontal ferns with a remote control? I'll install them. Pipe, fittings, valve, labor. Probably run you about 600 plus parts for the fancy nozzles you gotta order yourself. He paused. Just don't call me when your neighbor complains her prize-winning petunias are perpetually damp and possibly smelling faintly of whatever you're planning on running through there besides water. He knew, or at least suspected, but he didn't care enough to refuse the job. Deal? I said quickly. When can you start? Phase 1 was in motion. The plumbing foundation for my olfactory fortress was about to be laid. Ralph, true to his word, showed up 2 days later with a truck full of pipes and a look of profound resignation. He worked quickly and efficiently, tapping into the water line, trenching neatly along the fence, disturbing Carol's perfectly edged lawn just slightly, which gave me a petty thrill, and installing the PVC pipework exactly as I'd requested. He even mounted the solenoid valve neatly inside a weatherproof box. The misting nozzles I'd ordered online arrived the same day. Tiny brass things that looked surprisingly potent. Ralph installed them with practiced ease, angling them slightly upwards as I'd asked. All right, kid, he said, wiping his hands on a rag after testing the water flow. Just water, for now. She's all plumbed up. Hook up your remote doodad to this valve wire here, he pointed. And your horizontal ferns should be Misty. He gave the setup one last dubious look, shook his head, collected his check, and left, probably heading straight for a beer. Of course, the installation didn't go unnoticed. Carol spent the entire time Ralph was there, peering through her sunroom blinds like a hawk monitoring a particularly suspicious pigeon. Her gaze followed every pipe, every fitting. Neighbor Dave, washing his car across the street, wandered over. Hey, Leo, putting in a new sprinkler system? Getting fancy. Something like that, Dave, I called back, trying to sound nonchalant while simultaneously trying to subtly block Carol's line of sight to the nozzles. Just upgrading. You know, for the, ferns. Gotta keep 'em hydrated. Didn't know you were a fern guy, Dave said, squinting towards my distinctly fernless flower bed. Thought you were more of a low-maintenance hosta kind of dude. Trying new things, I chirped, perhaps a little too brightly. Later that evening, after Ralph was gone, I went out to inspect the handiwork. It looked surprisingly professional. Just a neat line of green PVC pipe running along the base of the fence, the small brass nozzles barely visible unless you were looking for them. Still, it felt exposed. I made a mental note to buy some fake ivy garlands to wrap around the pipes for camouflage. As I stood there admiring my nascent Spritz cannon, Carol's back door opened. She didn't come out, just stood in the doorway, silhouetted, staring towards the fence line. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the waves of suspicion radiating across the yard. She knew something was up. She could probably smell the PVC glue and my barely concealed glee from 50 yards away. I retreated inside. The plumbing was done, but the heart of the system, the pump, the remote, the scent matrix injector, still needed to be installed. I needed phase 2. I needed the specialist. Finding someone to weaponize pleasant scents wasn't as easy as finding a plumber. Mainstream HVAC guys weren't interested. Irrigation specialists just wanted to talk drip lines. Then, deep in the bowels of the internet, on a forum dedicated to haunted house design and theatrical fog effects, I found him. Atmos F Expert _666. His profile picture was a blurry shot of him standing next to a smoke machine shaped like a dragon. His tagline? If you can dream it, I can mist it. Perfect. We connected via a crackly video call. Atmos F Expert _666, whose real name turned out to be Kevin, looked exactly like his profile suggested. Mid-20s, maybe early 30s, wearing a faded 9-inch nails t-shirt with bright green streaks in his otherwise messy black hair. He sat in what looked like a basement laboratory, surrounded by wires, circuit boards, and unlabeled plastic tubs. "Whoa, dude, Leo, right?" Kevin enthused, leaning into his webcam. "So I checked out the specs you sent. Remote-controlled, variable pressure, multi-scent atmospheric mist dispersal unit integrated with existing PVC plumbing. Totally epic, totally doable." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Great. Look, Kevin, the main thing is subtlety." "Subtlety, my middle name," Kevin declared, apparently unaware of the irony given his hair color. "Well, not really, it's Gary. But I get you. You want that ninja mist, silent but fragrant." "Exactly," I said. "I'm thinking calming scents, lavender, chamomile, maybe sandalwood. Nothing too aggressive." Kevin's eyes lit up. "Calming! Nice! We can use ultra-fine atomizing nozzles. I got some sweet ones imported from Germany, practically invisible mist hook 'em up to a variable pressure diaphragm pump for range control. You want like gentle breeze setting, moderate mist, and maybe full soak." "Full soak sounds a bit much," I said nervously. "Let's stick to gentle and moderate." Right on, right on. And the scent delivery. Okay, check this out." He held up a contraption made of clear acrylic tubes and tiny valves. "My patented scent matrix injector. We preload cartridges, lavender, chamomile, whatever floats your boat, and the remote lets you switch between 'em, or even blend 'em. Lavender chamomile fusion. Mind blown." "Let's just stick to single scents for now," I suggested. "Keep it simple." "Simple, got it?" Kevin nodded, already sketching furiously on a tablet. "Okay, power source? Standard outlet nearby? We'll need a weatherproof enclosure for the pump and the injector matrix." Oh, dude, we could add LEDs. Imagine soft, pulsing blue lights synchronized with the chamomile mist. Total Zen garden vibe." "Definitely no lights," I said firmly. "Stealth misting, remember? And the remote control needs to be pocket-sized. And have a really obvious panic off button. Just in case." "No lights, pocket remote, panic button. Copy that?" Kevin said, giving me a thumbs up. "This is gonna be sweet, man. Like a Bond gadget. But for aromatherapy. I'll need access to the pipework Ralph set up and a power outlet, preferably one Carol can't see from her window." "When can I come install?" We set a date. Kevin, the Atmos F Expert, was going to bring the Misty Spritz cannon 5000, as he'd already christened it, to life. My ridiculous plan was actually happening. Kevin's installation process was enthusiastic. He arrived in a beat-up van that smelled faintly of fog juice and patchouli, unloaded several intimidating-looking cases, and set to work with a manic energy that was both impressive and slightly terrifying. He talked non-stop, explaining the intricacies of atomization dynamics and the superiority of his custom-coded remote interface, all while expertly wiring the pump, mounting the scent matrix injector inside its weatherproof box, and connecting everything to Ralph's pipes. Naturally, Carol noticed. She spent Kevin's entire installation day engaged in what appeared to be intense close proximity gardening near the fence line, occasionally accidentally spraying her hose just a little too close to where Kevin was working with electrical components. "Ma'am, could you maybe point that thing the other way?" Kevin finally yelled after a near miss with the scent matrix. "High-voltage electronics and water, not a good combo." Carol just sniffed disdainfully and pretended she hadn't heard him. The installation also prompted another visit from Pleasant Valley's finest. This time, Carol had apparently called 911, not the non-emergency line, reporting a suspicious man installing a possible chemical weapon device in my backyard. Officers Henderson and Chen arrived looking like they were seriously considering early retirement. "Leo," Officer Chen began, pinching the bridge of his nose, "we meet again, under fragrant circumstances." He gestured towards Kevin, who was currently calibrating a nozzle with intense concentration. "Miss Johnson reported a suspicious installation. Something involving pipes, wires, and potential hazardous materials. Time for a new cover story. The ferns weren't cutting it." "Oh, that," I said, trying to project breezy confidence. "That's just Kevin, my atmospheric enhancement technician. He's installing my new state-of-the-art eco-friendly pest deterrent system." Officer Henderson raised a skeptical eyebrow. It was a look I was becoming intimately familiar with. "Pest deterrent?" he repeated flatly. "That looks remarkably like the misting system you told us about last week. The one for your horizontal ferns." "This is an upgrade," I explained quickly. "Phase 2, we realized simple misting wasn't enough. This system uses targeted puffs of all natural essential oils, peppermint, citronella, maybe a little eucalyptus, confuses the mosquitoes, disorients the aphids. You know? Very humane. And keeps the squirrels away from my, prize-winning tomatoes." I didn't have tomatoes either. From her porch, where she was now observing with binoculars, Carol shrieked, "He's lying! It's aimed directly at my sunroom. I saw wires. It's probably recording me. It's Wi-Fi enabled." Officer Henderson turned his weary gaze towards me. "Sir, are there any cameras, microphones, or Wi-Fi capabilities on this pest deterrent?" "Absolutely not," I declared truthfully. Kevin's system, thankfully, was strictly remote-controlled via radio frequency. Just pipes, nozzles, wires for power, and good intentions for insect peace and tomato preservation. Officer Chen sighed. "All right, Leo. Look, we don't see any obvious violations right now, but make sure your pest deterrent stays on your side of the property line. No spraying people, no spraying pets, no spraying Miss Johnson's prize-winning petunias. Got it?" "Crystal clear, officers," I said, giving them my most trustworthy smile. They exchanged another look that clearly communicated, "This whole neighborhood is nuts," and departed. Kevin, oblivious, continued tinkering. The cannon was almost operational. Carol, thwarted by the police yet again, turned to her ultimate weapon: bureaucracy. The HOA violation notices started arriving fast and furious, each one more creatively interpreted than the last. First came unapproved fence line modification, installation of non-standard plumbing apparatus. Apparently, Ralph's neat PVC pipe was now an architectural eyesore. Then, installation of non-standard irrigation equipment lacking prior architectural review committee approval. I didn't recall needing approval for my garden hose, but apparently misting nozzles were different. My personal favorite was potential violation of airborne particulate regulations, unidentified misting emissions. Was she sending air quality samples to a lab now? And the pièce de résistance, dripping with irony. Creation of an ongoing olfactory nuisance via artificial fragrance dispersal. This from the woman who declared war on Ocean Breeze. I spent hours hunched over my laptop, cross-referencing the HOA bylaws, a document thicker than the phone book and twice as boring, with city ordinances. Airborne particulate regulations seem to apply mainly to industrial factories and vehicles, not lavender essential oil diluted in water, I muttered, highlighting a relevant section. Nuisance laws. Definition includes unreasonable interference with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. Is a faint whiff of chamomile really unreasonable interference compared to, say, someone calling the cops every time I light a candle? I drafted carefully worded rebuttals, citing specific clauses, demanding clarification, and generally trying to drown Chad, who undoubtedly drafted the notices for Carol, in his own red tape. It was exhausting, but oddly satisfying. If I couldn't win with mist, maybe I could win with paperwork. The cannon was finally ready for its final calibration. Kevin had finished the installation, loaded the scent matrix with cartridges of lavender, chamomile, sandalwood, and something he called invigorating citrus, and walked me through the remote control. It was surprisingly complex, with buttons for scent selection, mist intensity, gentle, moderate, and a terrifying red button labeled Max Blast, duration and nozzle pattern, wide cone, narrow jet, pulsing cloud. "Okay, dude," Kevin said via video call a few days later, guiding me through a remote diagnostic. "Let's just test the gentle puff setting on the lavender. Make sure the pressure's right. Hit button 7. Button 7? I squinted at the tiny icons on the remote. Are you sure? I thought button 7 was System Purge Emergency Shutdown? The icons were really ambiguous. Nah, 7 is gentle lavender puff, Kevin insisted confidently. Trust me, I coded it. Famous last words. I shrugged and pressed button 7. Instead of a gentle puff, the cannon erupted with a startling whoosh puff-puffed. A massive plume of dense lemony orange mist. Apparently the invigorating citrus cartridge was selected. Not lavender shot out, not upwards, but almost straight sideways, traveling much, much further than the supposed 10-foot range of the gentle setting. It sailed right over the fence, narrowly missing Carol, who was naturally tending her rose bushes right on the property line. She shrieked and ducked. Unfortunately, the citrus tsunami continued its trajectory towards my front yard, just as Gary, the UPS driver, was walking up my path to deliver a package. "Whoa, what the heck?" Gary yelped as the wave of citrus mist enveloped him. "Smells like lemons? My scanner's all wet and sticky." He emerged from the cloud, looking bewildered and damp. "He shot at me! You all saw it! Attempted misting!" Carol screamed from behind her rose bushes, already dialing her phone. "Abort! Abort!" I yelled at Kevin through the video call, frantically mashing the button I thought was the panic off switch. It turned out to be cycle sense rapidly. "Wrong button! Shut it down!" Kevin, looking panicked on screen, finally managed a remote override. The mist subsided, leaving behind a lingering citrus haze, a damp and confused UPS driver, and an incandescently furious neighbor. The accidental misting incident, as it became known, was all over the neighborhood Facebook group within the hour, complete with blurry photos Gary apparently snapped after recovering his scanner. The Spritz schism, as Dave called it, divided Pleasant Valley Heights. On one side, Team Leo, consisting mostly of neighbors who had also run afoul of Carol's various sensitivities, the wind chime incident of 22, the aggressively cheerful holiday decorations dispute of 23, the ongoing saga of recycling bin placement. "Honestly, Carol's had it coming for years," wrote Tim Garcia on the Facebook thread. "Remember when she complained my lawnmower was too green? Give her the lavender, Leo, full blast." On the other side, Team Carol, composed of her few allies, genuinely concerned parents, and people worried about property values being impacted by that crazy guy with the perfume cannon. "It's not funny, Brenda," wrote concerned Momoff 3. "My little Timmy has asthma and allergies. What if he breathes that chemical citrus stuff in? This has gone too far." Even Chad, my old nemesis from the garage stadium debacle, weighed in from the HOA account. The board is deeply concerned about the installation of unregulated atmospheric dispersal devices and potential violations of multiple bylaws. An emergency session is being convened. I found myself trying to run damage control, assuring people online and over the fence that it was just water and natural essential oils, totally harmless, like a fancy outdoor humidifier. My arguments were somewhat undermined by Gary, the UPS driver, posting about how the sticky lemon juice had shorted out his scanner and made his uniform smell like a floor cleaner for 3 days. The pressure was immense. The HOA was mobilizing. Carol was rabid. Neighbors were choosing sides. My quiet life had become a fragrant battlefield. And honestly, after the latest passive-aggressive note from Carol left on my doorstep comparing my existence to that of a persistent fungal spore, I was starting to feel less defensive and more offensive. The breaking point came the following Saturday. Carol was hosting her annual garden club luncheon, a terrifying assembly of women who judged gardens with the same ruthless precision they judged their neighbors. They were gathered on her patio, sipping iced tea and dissecting the perceived flaws in Mrs. Henderson's begonias. I was trying to enjoy my own backyard, grilling some chicken, when a particularly loud pronouncement from Carol drifted over the fence. "And the air quality has just been dreadful lately, Agnes. My neighbor insists on burning things, creating the most toxic fumes." Toxic fumes? From my chicken? That was it. She wanted scent. She wanted atmosphere. Fine, game on. I casually strolled over to the azaleas, pulled out the remote, selected calming chamomile, set the intensity to gentle breeze, and the pattern to wide cone. I waited until Carol was mid-sentence, gesturing dramatically towards my yard. "She wants ocean breeze," I muttered under my breath. "She's gonna get ocean breeze, or its calmer cousin, right in her smug, complaining face. Therapeutically, of course." I pressed the button. A soft, almost invisible mist drifted gracefully over the fence, carrying the gentle scent of chamomile directly into the heart of the garden club luncheon. Carol stopped talking mid-word. "Thanks to the neighbors. Sniff, sniff, what is that smell? Is that air freshener? Here?" Her guests started sniffing the air too, murmuring confusedly. One woman sneezed violently. Another fanned herself vigorously. Chaos, quiet and chamomile-scented, erupted among the garden club elite. Carol's head snapped towards my yard, her eyes locked with mine. She knew. Oh, she knew. This wasn't accidental citrus. This was deliberate chamomile. Her face turned a shade of crimson that clashed horribly with her lilac pantsuit. She opened her mouth and let out a shriek that could curdle milk at 100 paces. "He sprayed us! Leo Miller deliberately sprayed the garden club!" Operation Olfactory Serenity had officially become Operation Full-Scale Fragrance War. The next 10 minutes were pure, unadulterated chaos. Carol, shrieking about chemical assaults and poisoned azaleas, called 911 and code enforcement, and possibly the fire department, claiming hazardous materials were involved. Within minutes, my quiet suburban street looked like the scene of a major incident. 2 police cars, lights flashing. Miss Jenkins from code enforcement, arriving with what looked like an air quality monitor the size of a suitcase. Even a fire truck rumbled to a stop down the street, its crew looking deeply confused. Carol was holding court on the property line, waving crumpled HOA bylaws, recounting the chamomile attack with dramatic embellishments to anyone who would listen. Mostly Officer Chen, who looked like he was mentally composing his resignation letter. "He did it again!" she sobbed, pointing at me as I tried to explain the situation to Officer Henderson. "Assault with a deadly fragrance. Confiscate that spritzer of doom. It's probably radioactive." "Leo," Officer Henderson said, his voice dangerously calm. "Turn the blasted thing off. Permanently." "It is off," I insisted. "I just gave a tiny puff of chamomile. Ask the garden club, barely noticeable." The garden club members were currently huddled near the fire truck, demanding oxygen. Miss Jenkins approached the fence cautiously, holding up her air quality monitor. "My sensors are detecting elevated levels of bisabolol and apigenin," she announced, sounding bewildered. "Consistent with chamomile derivatives." "See?" Carol crowed triumphantly. "Proof!" It was at that precise moment of peak absurdity that things went completely sideways. Maybe Kevin, the Atmos F expert, decided to run a remote diagnostic without warning. Maybe I accidentally leaned against the remote in my pocket during the commotion. Maybe the cannon itself, sensing the dramatic tension, decided to go rogue. Whatever the cause, with a sound far louder than any gentle puff, a mighty whoosh pfft, the Misty Spritz Cannon 5000 roared back to life on the max blast setting, unleashing a torrential downpour of what smelled suspiciously like Kevin's invigorating citrus directly onto the assembled crowd at the fence line. Carol screamed as she was drenched head to toe. Officer Henderson sputtered, wiping lemon-scented mist from his eyes and uniform. Miss Jenkins yelped as her expensive air quality monitor got a direct hit. Officer Chen, standing slightly further back, just closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. Even one of the firefighters got a face full. Silence fell, broken only by the dripping sound from the now silent cannon and Carol's sputtering gasps. Officer Chen finally spoke, his voice dripping with forced calm. Okay. Everybody just take a deep, non-citrusy breath, and maybe step back from the damp zone. Leo, you and I, we need to have a serious talk. Indoors." The Spritz showdown had reached its soggy, fragrant climax. The aftermath involved less jail time than I feared, but significantly more mediation. Faced with multiple potential citations from code enforcement, Carol's threats of lawsuits for emotional distress and azalea endangerment, and the sheer undeniable evidence of having soaked 2 police officers and a city official, I was summoned to the town hall annex for a mandatory conflict resolution session. It was me, Carol, still looking damp and furious, mediator Brenda, a different, even more tired-looking Brenda than the garage stadium saga, Officer Henderson, representing the Please Make It Stop contingent, and Miss Jenkins, clutching her potentially damaged air monitor. "Mr. Miller," mediator Brenda began, rubbing her temples, "let's cut to the chase. The homemade, remote-controlled, scent-dispersing Misty Spritz Cannon 5000 must be decommissioned, immediately and permanently." I sighed. "Fine." The dream was dead. "Miss Johnson," Brenda continued, turning to Carol, "you must cease lodging complaints regarding standard household items like candles or barbecue grills unless they violate specific fire codes or noise ordinances, and you will attempt direct communication before contacting emergency services about non-emergency issues." Carol sniffed. "And he has to pay to have my azaleas professionally demisted and analyzed for long-term citrus damage." "We'll add it to the agreement," Brenda sighed, making a note. "And one more thing," I piped up. "If she ever complains about my toaster smelling too much like toast, I reserve the right to install a high-velocity crumb catapult." Brenda just stared at me. Officer Henderson choked back a laugh. Carol looked scandalized. We signed the agreement. An uneasy truce, smelling faintly of citrus and compromise, settled over Pleasant Valley Heights. A few weeks later, my backyard looked almost normal again. Kevin had come back, at my expense, plus hazard pay for the citrus incident, to dismantle the cannon, leaving only some neatly capped pipes near the fence and a few disturbed azaleas where the weatherproof box used to be. The fake ivy I'd bought lay coiled in the shed, unused. I sat on my porch swing, enjoying the quiet evening air. It smelled like nothing in particular. Grass, trees, maybe Dave's barbecue starting up again. It was peaceful, boringly peaceful. Tentatively, I pulled out a single, small, unscented white tea light and placed it on the table. I lit it. The tiny flame flickered innocently. Across the way, Carol emerged onto her patio. She saw me. She saw the tea light. Our eyes met. She sniffed the air once, twice, then miraculously turned away and started watering her, apparently unharmed azaleas, pointedly using a small handheld paper fan despite the cool temperature. No shrieking, no complaints. Was this victory? Well, I murmured to myself, leaning back in the swing. That was an expensive, idiotic, and surprisingly fragrant chapter. Lost the cannon, gained a healthy respect for city ordinances, the surprising chemical composition of chamomile, and the sheer, unyielding tenacity of Carol's olfactory paranoia. The air felt plain, too plain. Still, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, sleek, travel-sized essential oil spritzer I'd bought online. Sandalwood scent. Discreet, pocket-sized, perfectly legal. I looked around. Coast was clear. With a tiny, satisfying pfft, I gave the air immediately around my swing a single, delicate spritz. The calming scent of sandalwood enveloped me. I smiled faintly, taking a deep breath of my own personal, legally compliant atmosphere. The cannon was gone, but the spirit of the spritz lived on, quietly. For now.